work in God's service. There were 3 of these schools in existence at the time, one in Gilgal, one in Bethel, and one in Jericho. Now Elijah asks Elisha to go with him as far as Bethel. And at Jericho, Elijah bids Elisha to stay behind. It's not necessary for you to go on. Elijah knew that he had come to the end of his earthly career. And to Elisha, each invitation to stay behind and allow his master to go on alone was a test of his own faith and purpose. Elisha steadily persists in staying with his master till the very end. He would not turn back from the work to which he had been called as Elijah's successor. And he was determined to continue the work of reformation which Elijah had done so successfully. Elisha's words, "As the Lord lives," in verse 2 of 2 Kings chapter 2, suggests this determination not to forsake Elijah's trust. He would continue on to the very end with his master Elijah in the work to which he had been called. This young man whom God had called to follow the older prophet and to receive from him the training that was necessary to prepare him for the heavy responsibilities that he would soon have to carry alone. As long as the opportunity for service remained, Elisha refused to forsake his master. Notice Elijah's mantle in verse 8. Elijah's mantle had become the badge of his prophetic office. It identified him as a prophet of God. Rolling up the mantle, he smote the water of the Jordan, which resulted in the miraculous parting of the river so they could cross. By this act, we are reminded of the dividing of the waters of the Red Sea at the time of the Exodus, as well as the stopping of the Jordan River during the time of Joshua. Now Elijah is about to take leave of his faithful servant and disciple. And he gave Elisha the privilege of asking whatever he wished for. Now Elisha might have asked for temporal or material riches. He might have asked for fame, wisdom, or riches. He might have asked for a place among the great leaders of the earth. He could have even asked for a life of ease and pleasure. But Elisha didn't ask for any of these things. What he wanted most was to carry out the same work that Elijah had done, and in the same spirit and power of Elijah. To do that, he would need the same grace and the same help of the Spirit of God. He knew that nothing but the Spirit which rested upon Elijah could fit him to fill the place in Israel to which God had called him. So Elisha, he doesn't ask for any worldly advantage, position, or gain, but for the spiritual power necessary to discharge the solemn responsibilities to which he had been called. And by asking for a double portion of the spirit of Elijah, Elisha was not asking for double the power of Elijah. He was not asking for more than had been given the older prophet, nor was he asking for a higher position or more ability than had been given to Elijah. The Hebrew phrase which is used in verse 9 is the same word that is used in Deuteronomy 2:17, which denotes a proportion of the father's property that was to be given to the eldest son. So the request of Elisha could be understood as the eldest son of the departing prophet, a double portion of Elijah's spirit as compared with that which would be given to any other of the sons of the prophets. What he is asking for was the acknowledgement of a spiritual birthright that he might be enabled to continue the work that had begun by Elijah. Notice verse 10. It was not a hard thing for the Lord to grant this wish, but for Elijah it was a difficult thing, because it was not for a prophet to name his own successor. That was God's doing. Only God can choose those who will carry out the prophetic office. And Elijah knew that it was not within his jurisdiction to nominate the one who was to carry on the work which he himself had been called. For this reason, it is possible for Elijah, apart from divine inspiration, to say whether or not the request could be granted. Notice the condition of this request. If you see me taken, then you will know that the Lord has granted his request. And Elijah was taken away in what is described as a chariot of fire. Horses and chariots are often used in the Bible as symbols of might and majesty and glory, with which the Lord annihilates his opponents and saves his own people. For example, Habakkuk 3 verse 8 says, "Thou didst ride upon thy horse and thy chariots of salvation." Elisha witnesses this amazing event of Elijah being taken to heaven, translated to heaven without experiencing death. He now knew that he was to have a double portion of Elijah's spirit for which he had asked, and that there was an important work ahead for him to do. As mentioned earlier, Elijah's mantle. When Elijah first designated Elisha at the direction of God to be his successor, he threw his mantle upon him, as recorded in 1 Kings 19:19. Now the mantle was left to Elisha as an indication that he must now undertake the responsibilities of leadership, which up to this time had been carried by Elijah. Returning to the people with his badge of authority, he would be recognized as Elijah's successor. Elisha now makes his way back across the Jordan. The Jordan River would either present a barrier